Hey everyone, Danny Brown here, and it's time for another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. And I'm joined, as always, by Garret Cerkvenik of JFQ Lending. And this is our June market update report. Normally we start with Garret, but I figured I had a lot to kind of cover over. A lot has happened over the last month. So I thought
just kind of push me on over the side.
Yeah, I figured you could, back cleanup and kind of let me go first.
Just don't talk about any of my topics.
I'll do my best not to.
All right.
But okay, so right now, active listings on the market for Phoenix. We've got 15,442 properties listed for sale. This time last year, we had just over 16,000, so that's down over 4%. What's really telling is that we're down 8.5% from last month. So just a dramatic, loss of inventory month over month.
Do you think that's just
annually.
Because of the weather? I know when it heats up out here, things tend to slow down a bit, but.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of several things. The weather, people leave town the month of July, kids are out of school, all of our snowbirds leave, our wealthier population leaves Phoenix to go to much cooler climates. So our population definitely decreases this time of year. So seasonality, we do see a big drop off, but 8.5%. Month over month is a huge drop in inventory. So what the reason for that necessarily is, I don't have an answer. I can speculate that it's probably a combination of factors, again, with seasonality being one of them. I think the other thing is there's probably a ton of people out there who would sell, but then they don't know where to go. We have several clients who said, well, yeah, I would, I'm ready to sell my house, but I don't know where I would go.
What's next?
Next?
Do you think it's because, it's a great time to sell, property values are great, but then you also have to buy another property that is going to be priced well or for the seller as well. So
we have a client who wants to sell his house, doesn't necessarily like the area that he's in, wants to buy something else, but he can't find anything that he likes. And he does not want to move out to, the extreme suburbs to get into a price range that makes sense for him. He wants to downsize, get, and have a lower mortgage payment and all those things. But to be able to accomplish that, he's got to move way out of the valley. He's just not interested in doing that. So he's going to stay put. So, and I have to imagine that there are many people that are in that position. And I think that's probably the bigger reason over seasonality. Right now, monthly sales for last month was just under 9,500 versus 9,200 last year. So that's up 2.5%, but we're down 10% from last month.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So this lack of inventory is really affecting things everywhere. So our average sales price per square foot is $172.30 versus last year, $163.43. That's up almost 5.5%, and we're up 0.2% from last month. The average sales price is $279,000 versus $268,000 last year. That's up 4%, just over 4%, and we're up 0.4% from this time last month. So the dollar volume for June was $3.3 billion in sold real estate, and that's the highest total for any June in the history of Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of properties were moved in June. That's coming out of a May that was the busiest May that Phoenix has ever seen. So I kind of speculated this last month that what we're seeing in June is a carryover some from May, and I don't think that we will see this continue with the month of July, just due to the sheer lack of inventory that we have. Yeah. So nationally, homes for sale nationally fell 0.3% year over year. It's the first annual decline since inventory started climbing in September. While much of the U.S. has more supply, it's masked by 32 of the 46 largest U.S. metro areas having fewer homes for sale compared to last year. So Phoenix being one of those 32. So that's, kind kind of indicative nationwide. Construction has decreased in May as private projects dropped to the lowest level in nearly 2.5 years. Weak construction spending was the latest indication that economic growth has slowed in the second quarter. So, construction kind of follows what the economy's doing, and so builders are building less. We are, the jobs report came out, and they're stating that, the job unemployment is at record lows, which is great. But I read an article by an economist and wealth manager that I follow, Barry Ritholtz, and he was talking about how by most measures the U.S. is at or very close to full employment, and the unemployment rate today is at 3.5%, which is the lowest since 1969.
Yeah, I was to say 50-year lows right
now. Yeah. So he points out that in a typical full employment economy, and I'm sorry that I'm reading, but I want to quote him correctly. In a typical full employment economy, what you would expect to see is robust wage growth, rising consumer confidence, record employment to population, longer work weeks for people, and more overtime. The CEO survey showing confidence about the future, rising quit rates as employees aggressively change jobs, low and falling levels of people marginally attached to the labor force, high and rising consumer spending, more household formations, and housing sales for new and existing homes are strong. He continues to argue that the U.S. is nowhere near full employment, that the job reports that we're seeing don't tell the whole story. There's a host of other data points that point to the underlying malaise of the labor market. Although not all of these are strictly economic measures, they include long-term unemployment remains elevated. So people who haven't worked for a while and are collecting unemployment, those rates remain really high. A lot of people are working part-time who want full-time jobs. So the jobs report does not calculate that out. Disability filings, so people who are on disability, are increasing dramatically. The number of people marginally attached to the labor force is high. Major increases in rates of depression and social withdrawal. So he's associating that with people being in jobs that they don't necessarily enjoy.
Okay.
Unfortunately, America's seeing a drastic rise in suicide rates. We're seeing an increase in early retirements, and Americans are angrier than they were a generation ago. So he relates all of this to underemployment. So people are working fewer hours than they would like, or they could be working more hours with less pay. I think that that's a direct result of the recession. I think a lot of these companies, cut their the number of employees working for them and expected people who remained, who were thankful to remain,
to have a job,
even have a job, to work more hours for less pay.
Okay.
And so they're very much used to that and continuing to carry that expectation, even though the economy is doing well, the stock market's way up, and companies are making more money than they ever have before.
Do you think there's anything to, a generation ago, I feel like as a society, we were a little tougher. I'm a millennial. I'm an old millennial, but
me too.
I think millennials in general are less satisfied. It's, I don't know. It's I guess tough to explain. I feel like it's harder to get somebody to be satisfied with their work. Back in the day, in the Depression, and after that, like people were they got a job, they worked there for their entire career, they didn't switch around, and they retired with a pension, and that was it. And so people were just happy to have a job and were satisfied just having that normal, career path.
Sure.
Nowadays, in our current society, I think we talked about this in our networking meeting yesterday, where a lot of these younger employees get into a job and it's really just to build a resume to get to the next job. So they're less satisfied with what they're doing right now. Do you think that has anything to do with this?
Well, absolutely. I hate the term millennials, and I hate that, you always talk about them.
You associate it with that group.
Yeah. And I know that group hates being called that and whatnot too, but it's a generation of kids who got participation trophies. It's a generation of kids whose parents fought their battles, where they ran into, some sort of obstacle and their parents swooped in and saved them. And they've never had to face any sort of adversity, and they've got no grit. So if something gets hard or something is unpleasant, then they're unsatisfied and they bitch and they moan. And so I think when it comes to millennials, they need to have some sort of purpose, and they want to be in jobs where not only are they making good money, but they're also feel like they're making a difference in the world. And if they're not feeling satisfied, or they run into any sort of adversity, their first inclination is to quit and go somewhere else. And so, I'm not bashing on millennials. They're not all like this, but I think there's a large majority who are, and it really comes from, everybody gets a trophy. We're not keeping score. Everybody's got to win. And when you get into the real world, that's just not the case. Life is hard. Work sucks sometimes.
It always sucks for 99% of the population. We're not all marine biologists. We don't all go and swim with dolphins every day. Like, you're going to have to work and do something you don't want to do. And unfortunately, that's part of it.
And not everybody is an Instagram model or, this generation of people trying to make money off of social media. Work sucks. And you've got to find, why are you working? Is it to improve the lives of your family? That's a good purpose. So if you have kids and things, and you're going to a job that may not be necessarily satisfying, but you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for somebody else. So I mean, to kind of get back to the point, I think that has a large part to do with it.
Part of it,
because millennials make up the largest workforce in the marketplace right now. So that definitely has something to do with it. What we're also seeing, and I don't think that the jobs report talks about this either, is that a lot of people are working full-time jobs, but then they're also part of the gig economy. And I know of a lot of people that are working a 9-to-5, and they're not making enough money to make ends meet, so they're driving for Uber at night and on the weekends. And I don't think the jobs report counts that into it. So, we sit here and we talk about how great the economy is doing and that wages are going up and how great everything is. But I think in reality, it's not great for a lot of people. In your middle class and lower class. It's great if you're in the upper class and you get to take advantage of all of these things. If you can afford to put money into the stock market, and you're in a job, a high paying job, then it's wonderful. You're loving life right now. But if you're in middle income or lower income America, life has gotten very expensive. Your wages really aren't going up with the economy, and you're unhappy. And I think that's why you've seen a rise in discontent and a dividing in the political parties even more to the extremes. You've got an increase in far right populism, but you also have an increase on the left to extremism, and that's because I think people are super unhappy and not getting to participate in when pundits like us are talking about how great everything is.
Exactly.
To get on a little bit better topic, though.
That was deep. That was a heavy section of the podcast.
Very heavy. But right this month is the 10th anniversary of the U.S. economic expansion that began in June 2009. So we've talked about how the economy's been rolling for 10 years, and June marked the 10-year anniversary of us coming out of the recession. So if this streak continues this month, it will make history, surpassing the 1991-2001 growth cycle to become the longest since 1854, which coincidentally, they've only gone back to 1854.
Interesting.
They haven't gone back prior to that. So in recorded history, this will be the longest bull market that we've ever had. With that being said, we have had peppier extended growth cycles before. In the first 39 quarters of the record expansion of 91 to 2001, the GDP increased by 43%. In the 39 quarters through this March, the GDP has grown just 22%. So at its present pace, this run would have to run another 6 years to match the GDP from 1991 to 2001.
Interesting.
So I found that very interesting, that while the economy's been on a tear, GDP is relatively low compared to other economic cycles where we've seen massive growth. So that, people who are talking about recessions, it's not unthinkable that this market could continue to increase for, the considerable future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because, while we're talking about how good the economy is, as you said, unemployment at 50-year lows, stock market at record highs. I think we just hit 27,000, which was the highest we've ever been, right? And the Fed, at least on the interest rate side, the Fed is actually proposing reducing interest rates this month, in July.
Yeah, which I find very fascinating.
Which is crazy. It's a crazy market right now because, we were having this conversation 6 months ago where the Fed was going to continue to raise rates all the way through 2019 and into 2020.
Yeah.
And, now they're talking about dropping them. And the market right now is incredible for interest rates. As I say every time, it's a great time to buy and refinance.
Well, refinances are through the roof.
Refinances through the roof. Some of the major lenders out there, your big Quickens and Wells Fargo's and BofA's, are having record months on the refi side. Yeah. And where that comes is, a lot of these companies are really good at kind of, making hay while the sun shines. And my company's doing the same thing, but just at a much smaller scale, right?
You got to cash in while you can.
You do. And you've got all these people that bought houses last year and bought them at interest rates in the 5s and even in the 6s sometimes. And now that rates have ticked down, you've got an opportunity to really get a reduction on your mortgage. Yeah. And, you can save hundreds of dollars per month without having to pay any closing costs.
We're back in with rates into the 3s.
In the 3s. Yeah. You're seeing depending, with great credit and with some of the government programs, yes, you're down into those 3s. But, I think some of the highest rates on our rate sheet right now are in the mid 4s, where, last year I had folks with, perfect credit and 25% equity and things like that were getting rates, 0.5% higher than the highest rate available now. So it's a great time to look at interest rates.
Yes.
Great time to look at a refi and see if it makes sense for you, and talk to your lender about what that looks like and if there's a benefit. So not a lot of movement other than that. Besides rates, we actually saw rates with a lot of lenders kind of tick up a little bit over the last week, but. Yeah. That's just, that's not indicative of where the market is as a whole. And I think right now, because the market already assumes that the Fed is going to reduce interest rates, that's already priced in.
It's already priced in, yeah.
So we're not going to get to the Fed meeting and they're going to drop rates and all of a sudden.
Which is the end of this month.
End of this month, exactly.
We'll know more in August.
Exactly. So we're not going to get there, and then the news comes out that they dropped it 0.25%, and all of a sudden rates fall, and it's the best time right then. Well,
some are speculating that they may cut rates 0.5%.
That's true. Typically they go by quarters. Historically over the last few years, it's been 0.25% here, there, whatnot. So,
well, I think what's happening is, and we've talked about this before, is we're heading into an election year. Mm-hmm. We just had the Democratic debates of the 47 people who are running for the nomination, and the global economy is slowing. Mm-hmm. The U.S. economy is definitely part of that and slowing as well. And I've read and I've seen that Trump is basically calling the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, which is unheard of, on a consistent basis, pushing him really hard to cut the rates. And so it'll be interesting to see if they stick with the 0.25%, if they do 0.5%, with this jobs report that came out and with where the stock market is if he cuts rates at all. Yeah. So it's strange times.
It's a mad world, Danny. It is a mad world.
Yeah. And no idea what's going to happen.
No idea. We don't have a crystal ball, and it's, as we say every single time, there's never a bad time to take a look at what you've got and what opportunities are out there. Yeah. Don't wait for something. Don't wait for, rates to fall 0.25% before you buy a house. It's the
one thing I would say to buyers right now, because I know that a lot of them are frustrated that there's not a lot of options out there, is to have some perseverance and stick with it and continue to submit offers, take advantage of the market and where it's at right now to your benefit, because eventually the right house will come along. There's not just one house out there for everybody. So if you miss out on one, don't get too upset. And keep trying. Yeah. And eventually everything will fall into place and you'll get a property that you like enough. The two most important things when you're shopping for a house are location and floor plan.
Yeah.
Everything else can be updated and changed over time. And the two easiest things to change are paint and flooring.
Yeah.
So if you hate the paint or you're not a big fan of carpet and wish, that's okay. Those things can be updated, and the cost of money right now is pretty cheap.
It's cheap.
And going back to bashing on millennials is, we live in an instant gratification world, and everybody wants everything right now.
Yep.
And sometimes you just can't get it.
Yeah.
And
this is not a normal market. Like we talked about before, up until recently, you put your house on the market, it sells in a weekend, and then you go out and there's a million homes on the market that you can pick and choose from and just buy something, right? Like a normal market, it's going to take 90, 120 days to sell your house, and then it's going to take long to find something, And so that's just, I think, as we're getting back into that, it's just going to take a little while for consumers to kind of
There's always an adjustment
There's
period.
an adjustment period, exactly. And I think that's what we're in right now. And, don't get frustrated. Like you said, stick with it. You're going to find the thing that
what's
you want.
interesting too with the housing market is it depends on the price point that you're in.
Yeah.
So if you're above 500,000, your home's taking longer to sell.
Yep.
If you're below 500,000, and closer to that average for Phoenix, which is about 279, your home is selling relatively
Still
quickly.
pretty fast. 30 days.
So you just have to, we're talking in generalities on this podcast, but you have to really, listen to the professionals that you've hired to represent you and, temper your expectations regardless of what they are.
Yep.
And so, other options for a lot of those individuals who would sell and would love to take advantage of the lower rates and, the high sales prices that we're seeing are, it may stink, but listing and selling your house and moving into a rental for a short period of time. We've had several clients who have done that and are doing that.
Yeah. We lucked out but finding something, but we were getting ready to move into a 1-bedroom apartment, with my wife and my dog.
Yeah. So. And there's a lot of, short-term rental options out there for 3 months, 6 months. So that's always an option as well. And then that gives you the ability to be a little bit more choosy as well. When you look, I know moving, especially this time of year, is absolutely no fun, and having to move twice, from a home to a rental into a home is no fun either. But that is an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is, we are consistently talking about the iBuyers that are out there. Those are Zillow, Opendoor, and OfferPad. And we recently represented a buyer who purchased a home that Zillow had listed for sale. And these programs, the companies go out and they publicize how when they buy the properties, they do full inspections, that, when they list it, they have done all the they make you think that they've done all the repairs and they're relisting this property, and you think you're getting this property in really good condition. So we recently helped a client. She was purchasing a property from Zillow. We took Zillow to the house on this.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Zillow bought the house for $340,000, like $900 from whomever.
Yeah.
And that guy made out like a bandit. And we ended up purchasing the property for $315,000.
Wow.
So Zillow took a bath on this. I don't know what the fees, I'm sure they charged that seller a substantial amount in fees, cutting into their equity. So, keep that in mind that guy didn't, walk away with 30 grand.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, we strongly recommended to her to do several inspections. And, we did an AC inspection, we did a roof inspection, and we did a general inspection. And why this is important is it's important to have people representing you, because these companies, they're selling you a bill of goods that just isn't true.
Yeah.
We did our own independent inspections, bearing in mind that Zillow stated that they did their own. And we found that the air conditioner was in really bad shape and actually had duct work that wasn't connected and needed to be serviced, and the AC unit itself needed to be serviced. And more importantly, we found that the entire roof needed to be replaced.
Wow.
So the fact that Zillow didn't do their due diligence when they purchased the property, that if we wouldn't have done the proper inspections, our client would have been stuck inheriting those issues.
Yeah.
We were then able to negotiate with Zillow to get a large credit in lieu of doing any repairs. They did a bunch of repairs for us. In addition, they took care of the AC and a bunch of other stuff. They weren't going to fix the roof, but they gave us a large credit to apply towards the roof repair. So, not only did we get them to sell us the house at $315,000, but we also got all of this stuff as well. So I think the iBuyer programs are great. They just offer somebody another option, to choose from, and having those options is great, but you really need to have professional representation, people who understand what to look for, and because they're not here to protect you.
They're here to protect themselves
and make as much money as they possibly can. They are big corporations, and corporations are in business to make money, and they make money off of the backs of us.
Got it.
And so it's really important, I think, to have that representation, to look out for your rights, because she wasn't going to do any of these things.
Wow.
She's like, oh, well, they say they did all of this before. It's like, well, I don't know who did the inspections, if they did them at all. And, whoever did the inspections for Zillow should be fired, because, Zillow got a house that needed a lot of work. So it's really important to make sure that you have somebody looking out for you and your rights, because these companies just aren't.
Got it.
So that's it.
All right. That was a long one.
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of good topics. Yeah. And so thank you so much for tuning in. This was our June market update. Tune in next month, and we'll talk about what happened in the month of July and see if some of our predictions are right, see what the Fed ultimately ended up deciding to do. And hopefully you guys have a wonderful month, and happy 4th of July to everybody out there. All right.
Wasn't that a couple weeks ago?
Just last week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know what date it is.
All right.
Where am I?
Yeah. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.